Welcome to the T-Pac Arcade. Today's game is StarFox for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. In this 1993 rail shooter from Nintendo and Argonaut Software, the evil Emperor Andros has fortified planet Venom in an attempt to take over the Lylation solar system. Now it's up to Fox McCloud and his fledgling StarFox crew to pilot their prototype R-Wing spaceships and save the galaxy. And by the way, the crew consists of Falco Lombardi, Peppy Hare, and Slippy Toad. What great character names. If I went by Falco Lombardi, I'd make sure to become some kind of millionaire fashion mogul or world-renowned orchestra maestro out of principle. That name just emanates success and distinction. Not Slippy Toad though. Slippy Toad would be the guy who collects stamps and accidentally closes the garage door on his windshield once a week. So the core gameplay here is to fly through various planets and asteroid belts, blowing up enemies and bosses on your way to the Venom military base. You steer Fox's R-Wing with flight mechanics by default, so left and right are what you'd expect, but pressing down increases your altitude and pressing up makes you dive. It hurt my brain a little at first, but I got used to it, although I will need to rewire myself back to normal again before I dive headfirst into a rain puddle when I intend to jump over it. Anyway, as an on-rails game, your mobility is limited to the predetermined flight path, which leads me to believe the StarFox crew is full of good law-abiding citizens. You won't catch them jaywalking off the designated airway, or jay-flying, because spaceships. So how does the crew come into play here? Well, sometimes they flank your ship and shoot down enemies with you, but mostly they're just a liability. Several times in each level, one of them will pop up with a dialogue box imploring you to save them from an enemy on their tail, and you have to shoot it down or risk living the rest of your sad Space Fox life in regret over abandoning your comrade in favor of a power-up. Sometimes the power-ups are worth it though, like the double shot or the power shield that lets you take a few hits before your regular life meter kicks back in. Getting hit by lasers, enemies, and stage hazards all depletes the gauge and can sometimes even break the wings off your ship. This didn't seem to affect steering or anything, but whenever I lost a wing, I just felt a little embarrassed. Like I'm off to save the galaxy and I forgot one of my shoes at home, so I look like an idiot with no heroic credibility. But getting back to health meters, regular enemies don't have them. They just take several hits to defeat based on their size. But bosses have a damage gauge that you deplete by shooting their weak points, which flash red and yellow. You'd think that would be convenient, but more often than not, there are a bunch of different red and yellow flashing parts on each boss, and not all of them are weak points. Luckily, you've got a stock of Nova Bombs that you can toss at them instead of figuring out where to shoot. I generally saved these for the final boss, but sometimes I needed the extra firepower for the other guys. And I definitely would have used the bombs more liberally if they affected the environment, because some of the most difficult parts of the game were the stage hazards. I got crushed by falling towers, smacked by spinning partitions, jostled around by sliding corridor pegs, not to mention those see-through blocks that I ran into every single time. I don't mean to diss our avian friend Falco here, but in those cases, I felt as dumb as a bird flying into a glass window. I should mention that there are controls to alleviate this sort of thing though, like a forward and reverse thrust to temporarily speed up or down, and the rolling mechanic that lets you rotate 90 degrees or even do a full barrel roll to maneuver tight spaces. The aesthetic presentation of StarFox is a really interesting anomaly. As one of the first 3D polygon video games on a home console, it has a primitive feel to the visuals, really blocky and low poly. But the graphic artists on this game actually took those limitations and made something really appealing out of them. Everything looks like an artistic sort of digital origami, and who wouldn't like origami starships and space dragons? One time I folded a dollar bill into a tiny pair of pants, and this is at least 90% cooler than that. Okay, maybe 80% cooler. Those pants were pretty neat. But even if the graphics don't win you over, the sound design certainly might. This is one of the most beloved soundtracks on the Super Nintendo, and I can see why. StarFox also features one of my favorite audio quirks of classic video games, garbly digitized voice samples. Whenever you start a new level, General Pepper sends you out with this muffled, echoey, "good luck," and it just tickles me every time. The most novel aspect of StarFox is how it presents its difficulty settings. You can play the game at 3 different challenge levels, but each of them is actually a different set of unique stages. Course 1 is easy mode, Course 2 is normal mode, and Course 3 is hard mode. The only one I might have actually had a chance at finishing legit is the easy route, but rather than spend all my time perfecting a run on that one, I save stated through every route, because I wanted to see all the levels. I mean, Course 2 had space amoebas, and to deny myself seeing space amoebas was out of the question. Also, the final boss fight is extra cool in Course 3, because the giant robot Emperor Andros face has a second form with horns and eyeball lasers. It was epic, and it might just be the highlight of the whole game for me. That or the reactor core bosses, just for how atmospheric they are. On those, the music cuts out and the autopilot spins you around this confined little compartment with electric currents to dodge. Just when you think StarFox has introduced enough groundbreaking gameplay ideas, it throws more unique stuff at you. If I could change one thing though, I would consolidate the whole game to a single viewpoint. See, it swaps back and forth between a first-person cockpit view and a third-person behind-the-back view. Most of the time, you can switch to whichever vantage point suits you best, but I found the option a bit superfluous. I mean, my depth perception is already awful to begin with, so I'm gonna crash into everything whether or not I'm looking out from the R-wing or at the R-wing. Overall, as much as I don't typically like 3D games or rail shooters in general, I actually love StarFox. I feel like there's so much more I could say about it, but for the sake of brevity, I'll leave you with the wonderfully insightful and heartwarming Slippy Toad voice sample, which proudly proclaims